Okay, Mr. Singh, coming back to you now, how does a more accurate GDP framework help policymakers design sharper fiscal, industrial and sectoral strategies?
So GDP information is required both by central banks and the government. Central bank usually require the economic growth rate because they want to, while they are targeting inflation, they want to see that the growth is also not impacted. So it is a critical input in monetary policy decisions. Also for fiscal policy and fiscal stance of the government has a look at what is the growth scenario, and it also has an obligation to maintain its fiscal prudence or debt, so aggregates like debt, GDP ratio, etc. gain importance. Besides, we do not produce only one macroeconomic aggregate called the GDP, but there are a host of other indicators also. For example, even in the production side, we have gross value added or GVA for the different industries. So government can look at those GVAs and performance and decide whether any industry specific interventions are required. Also, we have estimates for consumption, savings, capital formation, etc. So depending on what is to be addressed immediately, whether government has to boost up consumption or it has to augment capital formation, those decisions are also based on accurate information about these aggregates.
Mr. Sabnavis, if we look ahead to the next decade, how important is a modern statistical backbone in sustaining high growth and managing volatility?
No, this becomes very important that we keep having something which is representative of what's happening in the country, because it influences policy. Because if we look at the two major policies which are driven by the government, one is fiscal policy and the other is monetary policy, it's always driven by data. So one can actually go back to the monetary policies which are being drawn up by the RBI, where they always talk about making sure that they want to control inflation. Now the question is, what kind of an inflation number are we talking of? 4% is a target, but is the current number which we are seeing, is it actually reflective of what's happening at the ground level, or is it something based on an old methodology which is being used? So today when we have updated it, we get a clearer picture. So when the Monetary Policy Committee decides on interest rates based on inflation, they're able to get a better idea on it. Similarly, if I'm talking of budget, the entire edifice of the union budget is based on nominal GDP growth rate. So you look at a growth rate of say around 10%. Now is this 10% really right or wrong? Because they're looking at the absolute number of GDP, which becomes the denominator when we're looking at the fiscal deficit ratio. So we have a fiscal deficit ratio of say 4.3% for the next year. It is based on the GDP number of the older base year. Fiscal targeting is also going to be based on the GDP, which becomes a very critical element. All the tax revenues which are reckoned are based on what we think the GDP will be in 26-27. So I think from that point of view, changing the base years gives you a more correct picture of both inflation as well as growth, which makes it easier to target both inflation as well as growth through monetary and fiscal policies.
Mr. Shah, as India aspires toward becoming a developed economy, how critical is it that our growth story rests on credible, transparent and internationally aligned measurement systems?
If you can't measure, how will you do the course correction? The CPI base year moves from 2012 to 2024. It takes into account rising income as well as urbanization. It removes VCR and radios in favor of air purifiers to reflect modern level of consumption. This measurement of inflation will represent what a consumer is truly facing. This change is also needed to capture the real movement of our economy. Digitization, urbanization, rising income. These are all creating newer industries, newer businesses. The backward-looking GDP data cannot capture it. By modernizing our data capture, improving them to realign with the level of actual consumption, we will get real-time feedback and it will help us take corrective action. Essentially, we can anticipate that RBI's monetary policy will be more aligned with the current level of consumer inflation rather than a consumer inflation which was based on slightly outdated consumption model. For example, food was 45% plus in old basket. Food prices were higher. It resulted into overestimation of inflation. Now with this revision whereby food basket comes down to about 37%, we will measure inflation correctly. It will enable RBI to take appropriate decisions.
Mr. Singh, so in 1 minute, how does this base year revision strengthen investor trust and prepare India for its growth journey over the next decade?
Well, definitely, because you might be aware that our earlier base 2011-12 was a bit outdated. So now moving forward to the new base, that is 22-23. I mean, most of the apprehensions that were associated with the previous series, they have also been addressed. Not only the base year has been updated, but now we have a better handle on, say, household sector. The digital economy part is being better captured. So all these put together will definitely boost investors' confidence. Besides, we have also taken a lot of measures for transparency. We have released our discussion papers in the public domain well in advance. We have held pre-release consultative workshops, and also we have now released our methodology documents. So we hope that these will have these will generate informed debate around the release, and also investors will have greater confidence because of the transparency of the process in which it was carried out.
So what becomes clear from this discussion is that statistics are not just numbers. They are the foundation of policy. When growth is measured accurately and inflation reflects real consumption patterns, rural and urban alike, decisions become sharper. As India enters a decisive growth decade, credible and modern data systems will be central to sustaining momentum. The India growth story is strengthened not only by performance, but by how transparently and accurately that performance is measured. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us. For the latest news and updates, please keep watching India Today.